Picture this. It's 1875. You're 1,000 miles from civilization. Temperatures are dropping below freezing, and all you have between you and death is whatever gear you can carry on horseback. Tonight, like every night for the past 3 months, you'll sleep under nothing but stars with 30 heads of cattle nearby and coyotes howling in the distance. One mistake in how you prepare for sleep, and you won't wake up come morning. This wasn't camping. This was survival, and the cowboys who mastered it developed techniques so effective that modern outdoor enthusiasts still use them today. The average cowboy spent 8 to 10 months a year sleeping outdoors, facing temperatures that could swing from scorching heat to bone-chilling cold in a single day. They couldn't just order gear online or pop into the nearest outdoor store. Every piece of equipment had to earn its place on their horse, and their sleeping system was literally a matter of life and death. What they created wasn't just functional, it was brilliant. The bedroll was the cowboy's most crucial piece of survival equipment, and it was far more sophisticated than most people realize. A proper cowboy bedroll wasn't just a blanket thrown on the ground. It was a carefully engineered sleep system that could mean the difference between waking up refreshed or not waking up at all. The foundation started with a heavy canvas tarp, usually measuring about 7 by 16 feet. This wasn't ordinary canvas. It was thick, waterproof duck cloth that could withstand months of abuse. Cowboys would fold this tarp in half lengthwise, creating a sleeping bag-like enclosure that was roughly 7 by 8 feet. The genius was in how they used this space. Inside the canvas, cowboys layered multiple wool blankets in a specific order. The bottom blanket, usually the heaviest, provided insulation from the ground. Middle blankets created air pockets for warmth, and the top blanket offered weather protection. Many cowboys carried 3 to 4 blankets, with each serving a distinct purpose. The blankets weren't random choices either. They were specifically wool, because wool retains warmth, even when damp. A crucial property when you're sleeping in morning dew or unexpected rain. Ground preparation was just as important as the bedding itself. Cowboys never just threw their bedrolls down anywhere. They looked for slight depressions that would protect them from wind, while avoiding low spots where cold air would pool. They cleared rocks, sticks, and debris, not just for comfort, but because these objects would create pressure points that could cut off circulation and lead to frostbite. The really experienced cowboys would scrape away surface dirt and pine needles to reach the warmer soil underneath. They knew that the top layer of ground loses heat rapidly to the air, but soil just a few inches down retains the day's warmth much longer. Some would even urinate on the ground where they planned to sleep. The warm liquid would heat the earth and provide extra warmth for the first few hours of sleep. Location could save your life or kill you, and cowboys developed an almost supernatural ability to read terrain for the best sleeping spots. They weren't just looking for flat ground. They were analyzing wind patterns, temperature variations, and natural shelter opportunities that most people would never notice. The ideal campsite had natural windbreaks, like rock outcroppings, dense brush, or slight ridges that would deflect the worst of the cold air. Cowboys avoided hilltops where wind exposure was greatest, but they also avoided valley bottoms where cold air settles. They looked for spots on gentle slopes, preferably facing south or east to catch the first warming rays of morning sun. Water proximity was crucial, but tricky. Cowboys needed to be close enough to water sources for the cattle and for their own needs, but not so close that they'd be sleeping in the humid, cold air that hangs over rivers and streams at night. They typically positioned themselves 100 yards or more from water, high enough to avoid the moisture, but close enough for practical access. Natural shelter was gold when they could find it. A thick grove of trees could break wind and provide some overhead protection. Rock formations could create natural walls that reflected body heat back toward the sleeper. Cowboys learned to spot these features and plan their daily travel routes to end near potential shelter sites. They also paid attention to cattle behavior. Experienced cowboys knew that cattle naturally seek shelter from wind and cold, and they'd often set up their bedrolls near where the herd had settled for the night. The cattle provided windbreak and additional warmth, plus their presence meant the location was practical for the night's work. Fire wasn't just light and warmth for cowboys, it was a sophisticated heating system that could keep them alive through the coldest nights. But building a campfire that would last through the night required knowledge and technique that went far beyond just lighting some wood. Cowboys built what they called banker fires, designed to burn slowly and steadily for hours without attention. They'd dig a shallow pit about 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, then line it with rocks to hold and radiate heat. The fire was built in layers, a base of large hardwood logs that would burn to coals, medium branches that would feed the fire through the night, and kindling on top for quick heat and easy lighting. The secret was in coal management. As wood burned down to glowing coals, cowboys would rake them to one side of the fire pit and cover them with a thin layer of ash and dirt. These banked coals would smolder for hours, and with a little stirring and fresh kindling, could be brought back to flames instantly. A properly banked fire could provide heat for 6 to 8 hours with no attention. Some cowboys used a technique called the long fire, building 2 parallel logs with the fire burning between them. This created a narrow channel of heat that lasted longer than a traditional campfire and could be positioned right alongside their bedroll for maximum warmth. The logs themselves would burn slowly and provide radiant heat even after the flames died down. Rock heating was another critical technique. Cowboys would place fist-sized rocks around their fire to absorb heat during the evening. Before sleeping, they'd pull these hot rocks from the fire and place them in metal containers or wrap them in cloth, then position them inside their bedrolls near their feet or torso. These natural heating pads could provide warmth for hours. The most experienced cowboys could judge exactly how much fuel to add to keep a fire burning through the night without creating so much flame that it would die out too quickly. They learned to read wind conditions and adjust their fire accordingly, building lower, longer-lasting fires on windy nights and hotter, quicker fires when the air was still. Cowboys understood body heat management in ways that modern science has only recently begun to appreciate. They knew exactly how to layer clothing, position their bodies, and use their own physiology to maximum advantage in cold conditions. The foundation was wool clothing that stayed warm even when damp with sweat. Cowboys wore wool long underwear, wool pants, wool shirts, and wool socks. But they didn't just pile on layers randomly. They understood that trapped air was the real insulator, so they wore clothes loose enough to create air pockets but tight enough to prevent heat loss. Hat technique was crucial. Cowboys never slept without their hats because they knew that a massive amount of body heat escapes through the head. Some would wear 2 hats or wrap bandanas around their heads under their hats for extra insulation. The wide brims also helped create a small dead air space around their faces that stayed warmer than the surrounding air. Sleeping position was strategic. Cowboys typically slept on their sides in a fetal position to minimize surface area exposed to cold air. They'd tuck their hands inside their clothing near their armpits or groin, where major blood vessels could warm their fingers. Feet were kept together and often wrapped in extra cloth or positioned near heated rocks. Many cowboys slept with their horses' saddle blankets as additional covering. These thick wool blankets were designed to insulate horses during long rides, and they made excellent extra insulation for human sleeping systems. The blankets were large enough to cover a cowboy completely and thick enough to provide substantial warmth. Breathing technique mattered too. Cowboys learned to breathe through their noses and keep their mouths covered to prevent losing heated air and moisture through respiration. Some would pull their bandanas or shirt collars up over their faces to create a small, warm pocket of air around their nose and mouth. Bad weather separated the experienced cowboys from the amateurs, and those who survived learned to adapt their sleeping systems for every condition nature could throw at them. This wasn't just about staying dry. It was about maintaining core body temperature when everything around them was working to steal their heat. Rain presented unique challenges because wet meant death in cold conditions. Cowboys would angle their canvas tarps to create a peaked roof that would shed water away from their sleeping area. They learned to dig small drainage channels around their bedrolls to direct runoff away from their sleeping space. The key was keeping the inside of the bedroll completely dry while maintaining ventilation to prevent condensation from their own breathing and body heat. In heavy rain, experienced cowboys would create a raised sleeping platform using logs or rocks to get their bedroll off the wet ground. They'd layer extra canvas or oilcloth underneath their regular tarp to create a completely waterproof barrier. Some carried small personal tarps specifically designed to create overhead shelter that could be rigged between trees or supported with sticks. Snow camping required completely different techniques. Cowboys would dig sleeping pits in the snow, creating walls that blocked wind and provided insulation. They learned that snow itself was an excellent insulator, much better than sleeping on frozen ground. They'd line these snow caves with pine boughs or grass to create an insulated floor that would trap their body heat. The most experienced winter cowboys would build quenzies, dome-shaped snow shelters that could maintain inside temperatures 30 to 40 degrees warmer than outside air. These required hours to build properly, but for long-term camps in heavy snow country, they were worth the effort. Inside temperatures could stay near freezing even when outside temperatures dropped well below zero. Extreme wind required different strategies entirely. Cowboys would seek any natural windbreak and orient their bedrolls to minimize wind exposure. They'd weight down their canvas with rocks and stakes to prevent it from flapping and losing heat. Some would dig shallow depressions to get below the worst of the wind, creating microclimates that were significantly calmer than the surrounding area. The mental game was just as important as the physical techniques. Cowboys who survived learned to manage fear, discomfort, and the psychological challenges of sleeping alone in dangerous conditions night after night. They developed routines and mental strategies that kept them sane and functional, even in the worst conditions. Routine was everything. Cowboys who lived through multiple seasons developed precise bedtime rituals that they followed religiously. These routines weren't just habit. They were survival protocols that ensured nothing critical was forgotten when exhaustion and cold made thinking difficult. They'd check their fire, arrange their gear, prepare their bedroll, and position their weapons in exactly the same way every night. Many cowboys talked to themselves or sang quietly while setting up camp. This served multiple purposes. It helped them stay alert and focused. It provided comfort in isolation, and it helped them detect changes in their own condition. A cowboy who started slurring words or forgetting lyrics knew he was getting dangerously cold and needed to take action immediately. Gear positioning was part of the survival routine. Cowboys would arrange their clothes, boots, and equipment inside their bedrolls or close to their bodies to prevent them from freezing. They learned the hard way that frozen boots were nearly impossible to put on, and frozen gun mechanisms could mean death if trouble arrived during the night. Sleep scheduling was strategic too. Many cowboys would sleep in shifts, waking every few hours to check the fire, add fuel, and assess conditions. This wasn't just about fire maintenance. It was about preventing themselves from falling into such deep sleep that they couldn't respond to emergencies. Light sleeping was safer sleeping. The most experienced cowboys developed an almost supernatural awareness of their environment even while sleeping. They could detect changes in wind, temperature, or cattle behavior that might signal approaching weather or danger. This hypervigilance was exhausting but necessary for survival in conditions where threats could emerge without warning. Cowboys were masters of improvisation and gear modification, constantly adapting their equipment to work better in harsh conditions. They couldn't run to a store for specialized gear, so they learned to modify, repair, and innovate with whatever they had available. Canvas treatment was crucial for longevity and performance. Cowboys would waterproof their tarps using combinations of pine pitch, animal fat, and beeswax. They'd heat these mixtures and work them into the canvas fibers, creating water-resistant coatings that could last for months. Some would add lamp black or soot to create dark-colored coatings that would absorb more heat during the day. Boot modifications helped prevent frostbite and kept feet functional in extreme cold. Cowboys would stuff their boots with dry grass, newspaper, or cloth for extra insulation. They'd waterproof leather boots with animal fat or dubbing, and some would wrap their feet in oiled cloth before putting on socks to create a moisture barrier. Blanket modifications were common and practical. Cowboys would sew leather patches on blanket edges to prevent tearing, and many would add ties or snaps to keep blankets from shifting during sleep. Some would sew pockets into blankets to hold heated rocks or other warming devices close to their bodies. Cooking pot heating was an ingenious adaptation. Cowboys would fill metal pots or cans with heated water or hot coals and use them as bed warmers. These containers would hold heat for hours and could be refilled with hot water or fresh coals as needed. The metal conducted heat efficiently and distributed it evenly. Tool repurposing was constant and creative. Horseshoes became pot stands and heat reflectors. Rope was woven into sleeping mats and wind barriers. Leather scraps became draft stoppers and emergency patches. Cowboys learned to see every piece of equipment as having multiple potential uses, and this flexibility often made the difference between comfort and misery. When cowboys worked in groups, their sleeping arrangements became more complex but also more effective. Group camping wasn't just about companionship. It was about pooling resources, sharing warmth, and increasing everyone's chances of survival through cooperation and shared knowledge. Heat sharing was the most obvious benefit of group camping. 2 or 3 cowboys could combine their bedrolls and blankets to create a larger, warmer sleeping system. Body heat that would be lost to the air in individual bedrolls was instead shared between multiple people. This technique could mean the difference between life and death in extreme conditions. Fire responsibility was divided among group members, with different people taking shifts to maintain the fire through the night. This meant the fire never died completely, and there was always someone awake to watch for threats or changing weather conditions. The division of labor meant better rest for everyone and increased safety for the entire group. Gear pooling allowed groups to carry more specialized equipment than individuals could manage alone. One cowboy might carry extra blankets, another might have specialized fire-starting materials, and another might have superior canvas or waterproofing supplies. By sharing resources, everyone benefited from equipment that no single person could reasonably carry. Knowledge sharing was perhaps the most valuable aspect of group camping. Experienced cowboys would teach younger ones the techniques that had kept them alive through previous seasons. Stories around the campfire weren't just entertainment. They were survival education, with each tale containing lessons about what worked, what didn't, and what mistakes to avoid. Territory division within shared camps followed practical patterns. Cowboys would arrange their individual bedrolls to create wind barriers for each other while maintaining enough space for personal movement. They'd position themselves strategically around fires to maximize heat distribution, with the most cold-sensitive individuals getting the choice spots closest to the warmth. The cowboy sleeping system wasn't just about surviving the night. It was about waking up functional and ready for another day of dangerous, demanding work. These men developed techniques that modern outdoor enthusiasts and military personnel still study and use today. Their innovations came from necessity, were tested under life-threatening conditions, and were refined through generations of practical experience. They didn't just adapt to harsh conditions, they mastered them, creating solutions that allowed them to thrive in environments that would kill the unprepared in a single night.